Are you killing your team's potential? Well, if you're among the 53% of managers that are struggling with delegation, you just may be. So Logan Speights and I are going to hit this issue head on today. We'll expose some common delegation pitfalls, we'll share some practical tips, and we'll reveal how AI is changing all of it. So let's get to it. I'm Bryon Morrison, and I welcome you to another edition of the Leaders List. All right, Logan Speights, welcome to the Leaders List. All right, so today we're going to be talking about delegation. And this is one of those classic subjects that every founder seems to have some challenge or opportunity, we'll say, in improving. And so you've spent your entire career really working around how do you get other teams to work effectively and other people. So what are some of the key things that you have found to be true, like why delegation doesn't work for some people, or what some of the key challenges are? Like, where would you start?
Sure. So like most things, you got to start with the founder. You got to start with yourself. It's a mindset over a tactic is honestly what it is. And so too often, especially as founders, we walk in and think that delegation is all about offloading work to somebody else. Because it's just, I have this thing that I have to do that I don't want to do anymore. Let me get it off of my plate. In reality, delegation is really more about expanding your leadership impact. How can you do the things that only you can do at a much broader level, and really be able to take your influence and push it down in the organization, so that it's not all sitting up at you and allowing you to be the bottleneck and to slow things down and to all the negative things that go along with that. And honestly, the reasons why most of our founders and most of us work 80-hour weeks whenever we're trying to build stuff, it's because we're trying to hold all that stuff instead of really finding a way to scale that leadership impact throughout our organization.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I hear founders and executives say they just don't do it the way I would do it, or do it as well. And the simple response to that is they never will. They never will get to that point, because you don't break that down in a way that makes it simple for them to understand how they can start to take on some of the roles and responsibilities and have the expectations be met.
Well, but it's not even just the expectation. Delegation only works in an environment built on trust. And so often, even that statement of they're not going to do it as well as I do is conveying into your people that you don't trust them to do a good job. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of them will do as good of a job, if not better than you, once they've been trained and walked through it a couple of times. And so it's really that, again, back to that mindset of, instead of what can I do, it's who's the best to do this, and how do I equip them to not only do it this one time, but to do it forever.
Yeah. So how do you get to a point where, like, what are some of the few things that you would put in place to make sure that you do build that trust and you do have the right team in place to be able to delegate?
Sure. So there are a number of things, and we've written a number of white papers and different things on this as well. I think the number one is briefing. Having a way that you are able to capture your ideas and your expectations clearly and succinctly and get that into your organization, I think is one of them. The next piece of that is understanding that delegation is not abdication. You're not just taking something and putting it out into your organization and have no more touch or no more accountability to it. And so that's the other piece, is knowing that you have to be involved in that. And so with that, it's tracking them, it's making sure that you have all of your project management tools in place to do those things. And then again, really starting to think through who's the right person to do this. And so getting off of that, how am I going to do it, to who am I going to empower to do it, and setting those expectations to really not only do the job, because you're not just going, here's a checklist, go do this thing for me. It's really, how do you set expectations on how they're going to make those decisions? How are they going to operate autonomously outside of you to actually do that job at a level that you would be able to do it autonomously yourself?
Yeah, those are all great points. So we're in this age of AI, right? Undeniable. And so when we start thinking to ourselves, like, if I'm really smart, I'm at least using these tools that are available to me. So you're a technologist, spent your entire career in that space as well. So what are some of the things that you're seeing as opportunities when I'm thinking to myself, I want succession planning, I want to build in ownership in my team, I want them to have the opportunity to take a leadership role. What are some of the key areas where technology is really helping executives do that?
Sure. The idea of AI is coming. If you're already in that mindset, you're already behind. AI is here. It just is. And so like you said, how do we as founders start playing with it, and learning the AI? I think that's going to be foundational for us. But
that's a great point. So you feel like they should be working. Everybody should be using AI in some capacity, right? Like one of the things that we've done in Proxxy is we told everybody to replace Google with ChatGPT for a while, right? Just at minimum to start asking questions differently. And now, of course, Google has, replaced. They've got their own AI built into their response, so you can talk to it in the same way that you might prompt ChatGPT. But the main thing is starting in. If you're not in the game, you're not playing the game at all.
That's right. And you're already behind, and it's only going to get faster from here. And that's as a founder, and what we encourage all of our founder clients to do. But I'll actually take it a step further. I think that you should be empowering your teams to not only use them in their day-to-day lives, but even start tagging a handful of them to become your internal expert on AI. What tools are out there? What can you use? How do you optimize inside of that? How do you take something like ChatGPT that can do so much? How does that really apply to the problem that you're solving in your organization? How do you really take this thing and do it safely and do it correctly so that you're not putting your client's data out into the public web, things like that? And so the only way that you're going to get there is if you're intentional about it. And again, that's part of, I think, this delegation is delegating even the fact that we're moving into an AI world. So starting to tap a handful of people who either seem good at it, or they're interested in it, or they're in an area that might be struggling right now. Grabbing those people and going, okay, so how can we use these tools better? Because they're just another tool. And give it a couple of years, and they're going to be just as ubiquitous as Microsoft Word and Outlook and Google Search. Your AIs are going to be right along with it.
Yeah. So coming back to the subject of delegation, that actually prompts kind of an interesting idea. You might have an interest in something, but if you're going to pick an area to delegate, maybe pick an area that you're delegating that you aren't already the expert in. So that's a good example. Like, I want to grow and learn in AI, but I don't have the time to run through every single platform. So by letting somebody else take that role and you keep asking the questions about how do they get there, that's a good place to start the delegation and start building trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So let's just go through some of the specific tools that are out there and think about like areas of delegation, right? So one thing for me that comes to mind is just, you brought up briefing, right? Mm-hmm. So the way briefs used to be done, and they still are done oftentimes, is you'll produce a document and you hand that to somebody, right? Exactly. Well, one thing that I've seen is just project management in general. If you have some sort of a project management platform, like I would refer to that as a Kanban board, but that could be Trello or Asana or Atlassian or Jira or whatever. I'm going to throw a bunch of names out here because those are all things that you can work with. ClickUp, they're all the same thing. And each one of those, when you start a project in one of those boards or you want something done, there is a card that you develop, and that becomes your brief. So it's a great way to be able to get an executive into the mindset of, how am I delegating work, right? I'm delegating it by giving some sort of a tool like a Kanban board. Here's my brief. So that's another way to get in that habit and get good at briefing the people who are going to be working with you on the team.
And the other thing I love about that is it makes it painfully clear that you're not abdicating anything, because that card has your name on it. And so that every time you look at it or every time you pull it up, that task is still there. Yes, you have your staff who's delegating and empowered to go actually do the work. but you are still staying accountable to it. And that's what I love about those tools.
Man, that's a great point, because that gives you one of the key points of delegation is the feedback loop. Yeah. Because to your point, otherwise you're just abdicating and wishing for the best. So any kind of a tool like that, a project management tool, will give you some sort of a consistent update, because you can just see whether or not somebody's working in it. And then the byproduct of that is trust. Absolutely. So that's a perfect example where technology really supports the whole process of delegation. What are some other categories you can think of?
I mean, if we start with just even administrative, at the very basic level, I mean, you've got simple plug and play tools now, everything from like Reclaim that'll help like fix your calendar and put in time and save time inside of that. You get like Calendly, right? Plug it in. You're not having to turn your entire calendar over to an AI bot. It's this very simple thing where you're able to block off your time. You're able to hand that out specifically, but it still allows you to start doing some of that. And they're starting to work more and more AI into that by the day. You want to start stepping up from that. You start getting into actual tools to help get your job done bigger, better, faster. Your ChatGPT is the ubiquitous one right now, right? Everybody's going there, like what we've even done. It's replacing Google for a lot of just basic, I need this answer type of things. You start pairing that with things that you do repeatedly. One of the ethos that we built into Proxxy and that we push into a lot of our clients is not to do repetitive tasks manually. So many times, and like we have an ethos. If you do it once, you write down what you did. If we don't already have like an SOP for it, if you do it again, you go back and check it to make sure that you kind of did it right. And if it ever happens a third time, it's escalating up to us so that we can find a way to automate at least part of it, if not all of it. And that's the beauty of that is the tools out there. So things as simple as Zapier, right? You could tap somebody inside your organization to be your Zapier expert. And it really is simple. It really is something that we do these 4 things all day, every day. What can we do to automate that? And just even asking that question, having somebody spend the time to try to find ways to shrink that will return, I mean, literal dollars into your account just with time saved alone and efficiencies and everything else.
Yeah, that's great. So wait a minute, let's just back up on that. Make sure we're clear on that. We talked about project management in general. Sure. Right. That gives that establishes trust and gives a good feedback loop. We talked about administrative tasks. Mm-hmm. So managing the calendar, managing how you identify time in the calendar. So that's all about time, and which gives you more opportunity to be able to work on other things. And then you brought up routine automation. And so Zapier, just so everybody understands each of those tools, tell a little bit about what Zapier does in case there's somebody living under a rock.
Zapier is a business automation tool. So what it does is it's literally drag and drop. Every time this spreadsheet updates this row, I want to send an email to this person with this information in it. And then it watches it, and every time in that spreadsheet that a new row is added, those following things happen every single time. And so you can start building those things in to where like client onboarding is a great first place. It's something that one of the first things that we automated inside of Proxxy. If we have a new client, anybody in our organization can onboard a new client. We have a form that you can pull up and you fill out the basic information. And it goes through and it creates all the documents, and it sends out for signatures, and it sends all of the pre-emails, and it loads things into calendars. And I mean, it does all of the things that usually a human would have to go, okay, I've got to remember to do that, and I've got to go put this there, and I've got to send that. And oh yeah, we've got to go into DocuSign and create the link and send it to them. But literally all that stuff just happens automatically because somebody filled out a form, and it's coming from the right people, all the right signatures are there, all the right, everything is set up. Folders are created, like all of the things that you would need to actually set up a new client. It takes what would usually take several hours for a human, and it literally happens instantly before the client has actually ever even signed.
Yeah. So there's a couple of points to bring up there. One is the thing that's really cool about Zapier is the fact that it works between applications. A lot of people think, oh, I have to do all this in one platform or one application. That's not true. So that's what it does. It kind of looks between different applications, and it can. So it's a great glue. So that's why that makes perfect sense. And then the other thing that's important to what you just brought up is mapping the key processes.
Yes.
So understanding that this affects this, and so that's one of the main things that we do with a ton of clients, because we will look for opportunities where delegation can happen, automation can happen. If it's a one-time or a repeat function, like those all come out of a good key process mapping process, experiment project.
Absolutely.
So, and then one of the other things that I would bring up is communications.
Yes.
I mean, if I think about the fact that, like right now, there's a great quote that everybody loves to throw around, is that knowledge doesn't matter. It's about wisdom, right? Because we all have access to information now.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, not everybody has the information that you want them to have. And I'm amazed at how communication is not laid out when it's this simple to do it. Like if you're going to do a big initiative, part of that is communicating why you're doing the initiative. And part of that is communicating how we're going to do it and what are the stages of it. And then when it rolls out, what did we do? And basically all of that can now be, there's an assistant there that can help you write those things out. So I think the point about, knowledge doesn't matter, but wisdom does. You still have to communicate the knowledge that you think is important at that time for those other individuals. And that's part of delegation, is making sure that they understand the full context.
That's right. Yeah. Context is key, because otherwise it's just a to-do list. And without that context, the people that you delegate to will never be able to make the informed decisions that you want them to be able to make, because they don't know what area they're playing in. And so, communicating that is critical. Yeah, absolutely.
It's really funny. I was just talking with a past student of mine. He's in a new role, and he's drinking out of the fire hose, right? And he got all this stuff going on, and his boss is delegating. And so I said, did you ask them why you do that? And he goes, no, I just did the task. And if you just think about that, right? He'll never be able to do that better because he doesn't understand the context of it. So again, briefing, giving all of the context that makes sense so that they can then take ownership of it and improve it. All of this comes together. Any other tips, tricks, ideas? I know you've taken delegation to an entirely different level.
How much time do we have?
If you want to share any last parting thoughts or any tips and tricks you've used.
Oh, sure. So everything, like even on the administrative side, if you keep laddering up to where you're actually working with an assistant, even things like Notion, with Notion AI, to be able to capture your personal knowledge and how you're communicating that back and forth within your assistants and your small teams, your office of the executive. There's all sorts of cool and amazing things that you can do there. And even you mentioned communication. Taking the time to learn how to train even ChatGPT on your voice and how you write your emails. It takes maybe 10 minutes to do. And you would be amazed at how quickly you can send professional emails, because now, honestly, if I need to write an official email to a potential client or to a vendor or something like that, I'm writing bullet points. I'm going, okay, I need to talk to this person about this, and this. And I put it in, and I say, I need you to both write and format this email for me. And it knows how I write, and it knows it kind of knows my voice, and it's able to take that and write out something, honestly, that's better than I even could write, because I'm not a writer. And so, but it produces that amazing email that's written well, that is clearly articulated, that is formatted correctly. And I'm able to take that, copy and paste, because that used to take a lot of my time, is because, I know the 4 things I want to say, but I'm going to stop and what's the right way to communicate this? And am I stating it clearly? And am I doing this? And is it professional? It strips all of that work off of my plate to where I'm able to stick to the things that I need to do. I need boom, 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 boom. I need these 4 things. Now all of a sudden I've got this professional email that I can communicate with. So even just little things like that. And it's amazing. A lot of us spend so much time in our emails like communicating back and forth. If you're able to cut the time that it takes to send a professional email in half, you've gained a quarter of your day back just with that. And
so that's interesting though, because where you're going with that is you're actually delegating to AI. And I think that's actually kind of a dangerous trap for some executives. Just delegating to AI does not bring up the rest of your organization to your original point, right? Delegation is a way of growing and scaling the organization. And so I think that's really interesting to recommend that, while you're playing with AI and you're working on some of that stuff, some things you absolutely can delegate to AI. But what we should really be thinking about right now are what are the tools that we can enable other people to use also to help us as we're delegating to them. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Thanks for that, Logan. This is incredibly helpful. There's a whole bunch of tips and tricks in what we just went through. If you have any questions about that, you can go into the links that we'll put with this video. And I'm sure you agree with me when we say to everybody out there, this is a top priority, because otherwise you remain the bottleneck. The organization doesn't scale to that next level. And there are so many tools and tips and tricks out there right now that if you aren't doing this, you're really cheating the rest of your organization. So thanks again, Logan.
Absolutely.